America is full of contradictions, and this is the story of one of them. What you're looking at is a map of the Electoral College in America. The reds are the Republicans, the blues are the Democrats, and the purple, well, that's what we're here to find out. Most democracies decide who wins elections by whoever wins the popular vote, but not the US. Instead, the US chooses its president based on something called the Electoral College. This is why, in just the past 20 years, two Republicans have won the presidency without winning the popular vote. The majority of Americans don't like the system, and haven't for a long time, and both political parties have attempted to get rid of it. So what is the Electoral College, and why doesn't the US just get rid of it? And more importantly, who actually benefits from it? You see, the Electoral College wasn't designed to be fair. It was designed to shift power away from some people and towards others. When the U.S. Constitution was being drawn up in 1787, and long before the U.S. had 50 states, the Founding Fathers created the Electoral College out of necessity. They tried to get all the states to agree on the Constitution, but there was a major issue. Most of the northern states were anti-slavery and wanted only free people in the population to be able to vote, while most of the southern states were pro-slavery and wanted enslaved people's votes counted, despite the fact that enslaved people could not vote. Eventually, both parties agreed on something called the Three-Fifths Compromise, which counted each enslaved person as 3/5 of a person. We know that's horrible, but this rule ultimately gave the southern states increased representation in the House and the Electoral College without granting any real political power to enslaved individuals themselves. In 1800, for example, Virginia's inflated electoral count, due to its large enslaved population, helped secure victory for its preferred candidate, Thomas Jefferson, over Pennsylvania's John Adams. Even after the Civil War abolished slavery and the 15th Amendment granted black men the right to vote, white leaders in the South implemented various forms of voter suppression, like poll taxes and intimidation, to prevent black citizens from voting. This meant southern states continued to benefit from a higher population count in the Electoral College, while excluding much of the black population, which gave them the high population count in the first place, from the ballot box. The U.S. Electoral College system determines the outcome of presidential elections based on votes assigned to states, rather than directly reflecting the popular vote nationwide. Each state receives a certain number of electoral votes based on its representation in Congress, one electoral vote for each House representative, determined by population size, and 2 additional votes for its senators, equal for all states. This creates discrepancies in voting power among states, as less populous states like Vermont and Wyoming have fewer residents per electoral vote compared to larger states like Texas or California. For example, Texas has 36 representatives and 2 senators, so it has 38 electoral votes, while Vermont has 1 representative and 2 senators, totaling 3 electoral votes. This means that in Texas, each electoral vote represents a larger number of people than in Vermont. In Wyoming, a single voter has around 3.5 times more influence than a voter in California, where the population is much larger. A major factor of the Electoral College is the winner-takes-all approach used by most states, where all of the state's electoral votes go to the candidate who receives the most votes in that state, regardless of the margin of victory. This means that even if millions of people vote for the opposing candidate in a state, their votes do not contribute to the electoral outcome if they don't secure the majority in that state. In 2016, for instance, more than 4 million Californians voted for Donald Trump, but because Hillary Clinton won the majority in that state, she took all 55 electoral votes. The Electoral College also leads to the phenomenon of swing states. Swing states are states where the vote could reasonably go either way in an election. Swing states like Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Arizona receive much more attention from candidates than states with predictable outcomes, as they hold the potential to tip the election. In 2016, Trump and Clinton made many visits to Florida, a state known for its narrow margins, while states considered safe for one party, like California or Texas, were largely ignored. Swing states effectively have a disproportionate influence on the outcome, and studies have shown that votes in these states can carry significantly more weight in determining the next president than those in reliably red or blue states. This attention and influence are possible only due to the Electoral College. Without it, candidates would likely focus on high population areas across the country rather than only a handful of states. In summary, the Electoral College amplifies the voting power of smaller states and swing states, sometimes at the expense of voters in larger states or reliably partisan states. This system continues to shape U.S. elections, despite widespread debate over its fairness and influence on Democratic representation. In the 2020 election, Joe Biden's victory over Donald Trump in the Electoral College, with 306 votes to Trump's 232, seemed like a comfortable win. However, a closer look at the voting margins in key swing states reveals how narrow this lead actually was, and how small shifts in voter behavior could have changed the outcome entirely. In Georgia, Biden won by only 11,779 votes out of nearly 5 million cast. If 5,890 voters, half of that margin, had switched their support to Trump, Georgia's 16 electoral votes would have gone to him instead. Arizona was similarly close, with Biden winning by only 10,457 votes. Here, just 5,229 voters switching from Biden to Trump would have flipped Arizona's 11 electoral votes to Trump. Finally, in Wisconsin, Biden had a margin of just under 21,000 votes. If 10,342 people had voted for Trump instead of Biden, Wisconsin's 10 electoral votes would have also gone to Trump. These three states alone account for 37 electoral votes. If those roughly 20,000 voters across Georgia, Arizona, and Wisconsin had chosen Trump instead, he would have secured these electoral votes, flipping the result to a 269-269 tie, or potentially winning the election, depending on further outcomes. This analysis highlights the narrow margin that can exist in the U.S. Electoral College system, and how a small number of voters in key states can have a significant impact on the final outcome. Several times throughout history, Congress has attempted to replace the Electoral College with a popular vote system. The first attempt was in 1816, but it was blocked by senators from southern states who argued that it would harm their political influence. In 1969, another effort gained significant bipartisan support and passed the House, only to get blocked in the Senate by Southern senators who still view the Electoral College as one of their remaining political safeguards. I mean, why change a system that historically and to this day continues to benefit white Southerners? Today, the Electoral College's effects have shifted. States with relatively small populations, such as Wyoming and North Dakota, have a disproportionately high influence due to the minimum of 3 electoral votes per state. Meanwhile, more populous states, often with greater racial and political diversity, see their voters' power diluted. Many states that benefit from this system are Republican-leaning, which partly explains why recent Republican presidents have won the Electoral College while losing the popular vote. As a result, current calls for reform largely come from Democrats who argue for a popular vote system to ensure a fairer representation of all voters. However, historically, critics of the Electoral College have come from both sides of the aisle, often depending on how the system affects their political power. Harris gained traction initially when President Joe Biden announced in July that he would not be seeking re-election, handing the Democratic nomination to her. Throughout August and September, she managed to build a lead, drawing on her base's support and leveraging Biden's backing. But Trump, who has a history of tightening races in the final stages, has steadily closed that gap over the past 3 weeks, bringing the candidates to a near tie. With just a few days to go until the 2024 U.S. presidential election, the race between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump is shaping up to be one of the tightest contests in recent history. Polling as of late October shows Harris with a slight edge, less than a 1% lead over Trump nationally. However, in key battleground states, Trump seems to have a slight advantage, which could be critical given the role these states play in the Electoral College. If we draw on Trump's 2016 campaign, we can see that he leveraged the power of swing states. He defied polling predictions to win over Hillary Clinton. He could well replicate that performance, given his proven ability to energize his base and leverage key issues in battleground states. On the other hand, Harris's campaign is focused on sustaining her narrow lead, emphasizing issues like healthcare, climate action, and safeguarding democratic norms. This race will likely come down to the wire, and with both candidates nearly neck and neck, turnout and last-minute campaign efforts will be critical. Whether Trump can again pull off an upset or Harris can maintain her slim advantage may well be determined by the Electoral College. So it really all comes down to their performance in these swing states.